but just take it day by day. Start with the small stuff. Maybe start with a prayer once in a while and start reading passages. Go and do service with your friends and just take it little by little and just know that like a relationship takes time and it's super unique. So just gotta be open-minded and have an open heart. So my name is Sole. I go to council. I'm a rising senior. And I joined Strength in Christ when I was a junior. Both of my parents work at Good Counsel, and my mom's a religion teacher.
Awesome. So obviously, with their mom being a religion teacher, faith must be something that's talked a lot about at home, I would assume. So what's your faith journey been like? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been in Catholic school my entire life. My mom has like really instilled like a lot of like Catholic values into me as a child. So she taught me how to pray, would read me Bible passages. But another really big influence was my grandma. And she would take me to church all the time with her, take me to like meetings where they would pray the rosary. And yeah, she almost became a nun, but she really wanted to have kids. So unfortunately, she didn't go down that path. But yeah, so she was a really big part in my faith journey. Just those two people really getting me to go to church, pray a lot. But it hasn't always, it's like as you're a kid, it's really easy to, kind of just like when your parents are guiding you, like I go to church because my mom tells me to, and stuff like that. And then when you get older, it's a little bit harder to maintain the journey. And unfortunately, I kind of going into middle school, early high school, I strayed a little bit from God. But I just recently kind of found my way back. And, that's been like amazing. And I definitely am really happy that, I found my way back to God.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think kind of led to you drifting away? Was it just, getting older, wanting to go your own way, or just more workload from school? If there's anything in particular that kind of led to the drifting away?
Yeah, so definitely after my grandmother's passing, I didn't really have that constant, person kind of urging me to always, be in a religious setting. And, it was time to kind of form my own path. And that was really hard, especially with school. Schoolwork became like the center of my life. And I fell into a lot of sin and I just started putting a lot of things like in front of God. Friends, popularity, stuff like that just became way more important to me um, than God. And I wasn't really even noticing it, to be honest, until I, recently came back and I was like, man, I had strayed so far from God in these past few years. But yeah, it was simply just getting older. I unfortunately didn't have the discipline or really the knowledge to kind of create my own path to God without really the help of others.
Yeah, definitely. It's always hard when you kind of, especially someone like your grandmother, who not only, is your grandmother, but your faith guide and showing you everything you know. So I can obviously see why it was hard to kind of find your own path after everything you've known is through your grandma's leadership. But I'm happy that you've been able to find your way back to Christ. So along those lines, what's one of your favorite Bible verses or passages? Maybe it's something you learned from school or what your grandma might have taught you, your mom. What is one of your favorite verses or passages?
Okay, so it's Psalms 21. Um, or it's maybe 21 and 22. Psalms 21 and 22. Um, it's basically it's a passage about protection. And I think that really helped me. I really struggled with a lot of stuff in my life, and I kind of have this kind of anxiety that I'm not doing enough with my relationship with God. And that specific passage, my mom gave it to me, and it's really about just as you call for God, He is there and He will protect you, and you can always run to Him. And just it kind of shows that no matter what, He is always with you. Talking about how like I really I will be 100% up. I really struggle with sin. It's really hard. We always fall into it. I always like it's really hard. I think the hardest thing is to also forgive yourself when you sin, because for me, it's like, oh, I will never be good enough. I don't deserve, God, stuff like that. And so that passage really helps me because, like, it shows that even though you're struggling with temptation and sin, God is always there, and He's always there that you can run back to.
Absolutely. It's so important to have that focal point for sure. Talk a little bit more about, I like how you mentioned forgiving yourself, because I think that's something that's very hard for us to do as humans is to forgive ourselves for, we admit that we're wrong, and we can forgive ourselves. Why is that, so important? Why do you think that's important, for us to learn how to forgive ourselves? Because I think that's really something that, as you mentioned, we don't do enough for ourselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, growing up, forgive your neighbor, love your neighbor. And, my mom, I love her so much, and she really instilled that into me. And, growing up, she always taught me, you gotta forgive because you need someone to forgive you. And how really holding on to anger, it hurts you more than the other person. But I think for me, when it talks about like forgiving yourselves, is that, you can't let your sin hold you back. A lot of times it's really easy to kind of think of yourself in a negative way because you see like all these saints, and when you go do self-reflection of like how your behavior has been for the day or for the week or whatever, you kind of look back and you're like, man, I've sinned countless and countless of times. And sometimes there's been days where like I have honestly been embarrassed to pray to God, for my good night prayers, because I felt like I don't even deserve to talk to Him. And it's like I kind of was thinking that, and I realized, like that's the devil talking, because you sometimes you gotta just let it go. You have to repent and you have to move on, because the moment you let it, let that sin still have an effect in your life, like you can't really take a step forward if you always have something holding you back. And I'm not saying that like, oh, you shouldn't like use your past actions to help yourself improve, but like you can't really let it weigh on you. Like guilt's a normal thing, shame, like feeling guilty, stuff like that's normal. But like we can't let it get to the point where like it creates a barrier between you and God. Because I think a lot of the times, spiritual warfare, we get attacked in a lot of sneaky forms. I really do think one of them is, not forgiving ourselves. And that actually, fun fact, Mr. Remedios, freshman year religion, he really taught us that. He was like, "You people forgive everyone but themselves, and then let their sin dig them down into like a hole, and they get really, sad and just further away from God." So I think that's really important to forgive yourself too.
Yeah, you said a whole lot of good things there, talking about, forgiving yourself is important. And also, you kind of hinted a little bit of like, self worth, feeling that, oh, you can't talk to God because of your sin. But I think that's one of the things that, I personally love about God is that despite, our flaws and our faults, which we're going to have, He's always there to forgive us and reconcile us if we repent. So that's, one of the things that I, appreciate about Christ. But you're absolutely right. And what you're saying is so real that, you get hard on yourself and then you think, God, why do you, put up with me? I'm going to sin and do all this stuff, but yet you still love me. And that's what makes it more powerful, in my opinion. We talked a lot about, some of your struggles. Let's kind of shift a little bit. What's been some of your faith victories? Maybe since you, come decided to come back and start rediscovering God again. What's been some of your victories in your faith life?
Well, I think something uh, is I really have kind of found like a way to create more peace for myself in my life. It's sort of like prayer, but sometimes it's just like just kind of being with God, not really saying anything, but kind of putting yourself in like a mental space and like calming yourself and, kind of feeling his presence. And a lot of times, like, I think what's really been the best is coming back because I've been able to see God around me. And that wasn't really something that I was able to see before. Like if I go on walks with my mom, like hiking trips, stuff like that, I can find God in those times. When I do service, I just got back from El Salvador, which was super amazing. I think that really helped with like my faith and seeing God within the people. That's one of the things I really like about the Catholic Church is like the works aspects, and I really think that you know rekindling my relationship with God, I've been able to find a lot of, works opportunities. I just feel kind of a lot more stable in my life because I kind of feel like someone art is like always has my back. And so I've just been honestly, I've gotten like so much more happier after I found my way back to God.
That is awesome. Now, you mentioned you just came back from El Salvador, which, from what I know, is a very impactful experience. Can you kind of share a little bit about what you did, what you learned, the people you met, all that stuff?
Yeah. So El Salvador it was kind of it was amazing and it was definitely a very life-changing experience. It was kind of everything at once. You see a lot of suffering that you don't really see in the US, and different it's a completely different lifestyle than here in the US. Down there, I feel like my faith was tested because you see all this suffering around you and you're doing service. Like I was helping build a school. I was in Ciudad Arce. I went to Las Delicias to help give food out to people, visit people in their homes. I help out with, the child care services. And it's heartbreaking and also heartwarming at the same time because everyone there is so nice and so amazing. And you go to people's houses and you know it's like maybe like a couple square feet and not there's it's like dirt floors and no door. It's kind of just an open uh cutout in the cinder block building that's their home, and they'll still give you hugs, and like they don't even know us and they'll just walk to us and give us hugs, and they're just so grateful and so loving down there. They'll give us chairs, like immediately you walk in they'll find a chair and have you sit down, and they're just so grateful and they're so content with their lives. And I think that was really interesting because it almost contrasts, in the US, uh, especially through social media. I see like a lot of people, complain, complain, complain. I'm not saying that like it's wrong to complain. Some issues I definitely agree can be fixed and complain, but like in El Salvador, it was really like they just seemed so content. And I think the biggest thing that they all had such strong faith. Every like they every go into people's houses, they have pictures, of Our Lady of Guadalupe, crosses everywhere. It was so cute. I had lunch with the kids, and like before they were about to eat, they all said prayer together. It was so adorable. And I just think that it was really hard because it made me have to maybe it was a challenge to find God amongst all this suffering. And it kind of made me see that, suffering is kind of a mystical way that God works in our lives. And sometimes you don't really have to understand it, you just have to have faith. And like it was just me like believe like I just had to have faith in him, and I think my faith grew stronger after El Salvador because even though there was so much suffering, I could still feel God and I knew he was there.
Again, there's a lot of good gems that you just mentioned. I think even if you're non-religious, I think the lessons that you've learned, the experiences you had, can teach you a lot, on a non-religious level, gratitude and appreciation, kindness, those are traits that, stretch far beyond religion. But I think you mentioned how you kind of were wondering where God was in the suffering. And I think that's just another, intriguing, question that you bring up, if God, is the creator of everything. Why does he have some of these people, suffering? But, despite that, they are able to treat you and everyone else that was on the trip with the most, kindness, open heartedness, giving you chairs, pulling up chairs for you to sit down. I think that just shows that, you know, kindness, the fruits of the spirit are greater than any suffering, which I think is very interesting. And I'm happy that you got to have that experience and share it, because I think that's something that will stick with you uh, for a long time. So, do you feel more? I don't want to say appreciative, but more content. How do you plan to kind of do things, think about things differently? Now that you've had the experience in El Salvador.
Yeah, so I definitely came back very grateful for what I had. Extremely grateful for my parents, for this house, education, the opportunities that America has. But I also came back with a lot of sadness and anxiety because I I quickly, realized the global scale of poverty. And, I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough in my life. I was like, I need to do more service. I need to do this. And it was like, it was really hard because you're trying to fight a challenge the that the entire world struggles with, a systemic thing, like a whole country. And even though I loved El Salvador, we didn't you didn't really see a lot of change. Like this we still the school wall isn't done yet. And it was really hard, and like people that like we can give them as much money, but like it's still really not going to do anything. And it was really hard, coming back because it felt really unfair. It was unfair that I could go back to the US and have all this stuff here and they didn't. And I felt like I constantly like I should go out and do something. I need to do more service. And so that it was kind of something I'm still struggling with now. But yeah.
Yeah, I think, I definitely see, it's mixed emotions, like you mentioned, all the happiness and joy that you felt, but also the sadness and the disappointment that, much has not changed, for the people of El Salvador. But I think definitely service is something that is a great way to kind of honor, your experiences there, and there's plenty of service to do in our own backyard. There's people in our neighborhoods that, could use our help, and so I think that's a great way to get involved and carry on kind of that legacy, that mantra, and keep those lessons alive that you kind of learned in El Salvador. That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. I appreciate you sharing your experiences there. All right, kind of in the home stretch here. Obviously, you've been, part of Catholic for your entire life. It's been a huge part of your life, like we kind of mentioned at the beginning. What might you say to people who are a little unsure of their faith? Maybe they, like you, started off religious and then kind of drifted away later in life, or maybe they've never, experienced religion at all. They've never been religious at all. What might you say to them, Soleil?
Yeah, actually, I a friend recently, this made me so happy. A friend recently reached out to me and asked me if I could teach her more about God. And it really had me thinking about that question. So I first told her, and to like anyone who's talking about, I feel like a lot of times Christianity as a whole has a lot of misconceptions. Um, and you really have to do your own research, and you really have to start that relationship off on your own. Your relationship with God is unique to everyone, so I feel like you just really have to be open to it. Scripture's amazing, great way to start. Service, a great way to start, but you really just have to open up your heart. And I know like not everyone might believe me, but God is truly wonderful, and he will make your life wonderful. And God is love, God is joy, and God is good all the time. And like truly you will feel your life get better after you come back to God. He's like a rock. When you're sad, when I'm sad, you can go to him. And it's just, I feel like there's so many benefits of having God in your life. So I'm just like, why not? And if you don't like it, I would never force someone because, everyone has their own pace, but, just take it day by day. Start with the small stuff. Maybe start with like a prayer once in a while, and then start, reading passages, going to do service with your friends, and just take it little by little and just know that like relationship takes time and it's super unique. So just got to be open minded and have an open heart.
Yeah, I think taking it day by day is another one of those things that I don't think we do a good job of as humans, because we think of all the 50 things we have to do, but not, appreciating each day for what it's worth. But, in the Lord's Prayer, it says, give us this day our daily bread, and I think, you know, sometimes we want our bread for the week. But I
Mhm.
think, God will provide. He talks about in Matthew how, paraphrasing that, the birds will have food, the animals will have food. And similarly, God will provide for us. So I think that's, it's a good lesson that we all kind of struggle with, where's our faith, when we don't see what God is going to provide, we don't see how he's going to do it. But just taking it day by day, I think is a approach that I'm definitely going to try to do a better job of myself, not worrying about, tomorrow, the next day, next week, but just taking everything day by day, because that's when you get to appreciate, everything that God has done for you. And I think, you could tell me if I'm wrong, because, going back to your El Salvador trip, I think that I imagine was a great experience where you were able to take things kind of day by day, you know, and just enjoy it for what it was, especially since it was a change of scenery and a
Mhm.
change of your typical worldview. Am I right there?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great, closing thought. Just take it day by day and start with the small stuff, like you said, you know, like a little prayer or a service project. I think those are great ways to kind of build your faith. And I'm glad that you were able to kind of share it with your friend, who was interested in learning more about Christ, that you were able to kind of guide them in the right direction. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Sole, thank you very much for taking a few minutes to talk with us. Really appreciate all your insights from your upbringing, your El Salvador trip, everything else, all the little tidbits and gems, and hopefully we can have you back again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a nice night.